Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the virtual masterclass about high-performing email and SMS with Klevu and PAASE about the Klaviyo connector. Very excited about this. Let me just people. So just a little bit of housekeeping. There is a chat, so please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. It's nice to see kind of who's on, and you can ask questions to us as well as we go in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer as we go, or we'll follow up with you after the event. But yeah, we want to make this an interactive session, so please do chime in the chat. There will be time at the end of the presentation for a detailed Q&A with us, so feel free to save your questions for then too, but I always find with these things, it's better to ask it while it's in your head, and we can always come back to it later. My name is Rachel Tonner. I am Global Head of Marketing for Klevu. Yes, this meeting will be recorded and it'll be sent to you automatically afterward. And I'm joined here today by David and Phil from PAASE, who is a Klevu partner and performance marketing agency. Dave and Phil, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Phil Manson, Managing Director at PAASE. We're a Klaviyo Elite Master Partner, the only one in the UK and the first one of, well, now 4 in Europe. So very excited with this new connector that we're going to be talking through today.
My name's Dave. There's a slight typo now. Unfortunately, I'm not a commercial director. I'm commercial manager. I haven't quite had a promotion yet. My background, I used to be a customer success manager and sort of worked my way into sales. We love a bit of tech and how it integrates into Klaviyo, so really excited to sort of talk you guys through how it works and sort of the next stages.
And it looks like I've just given you a promotion, David. Sorry about that. Amazing. Well, thank you for being here today. Just a little bit of an intro about Klevu for some people on the call who might not be using Klevu at the moment. We are a product discovery platform, including Smart Search, which is an AI-driven search solution, category merchandising, which you can use to reorder products on category pages, and smart recommendations, which you can mix AI and manual strategies on almost any page of your website in product recommendations banners. And how that all fits together, kind of, if you think about a customer journey, Sarah, who searches for a pendant light using Smart Search, and then she might navigate into a category which shows her best options one-to-one for her. And then Smart Recommendations gives Sarah even more inspiration in the basket, and she checks out happy. So it's really tying the loop together on the customer journey. And I'll pass over to Dave or Phil.
There's too many mute buttons. As an agency, we're a marketing automation agency, primarily focusing with Klaviyo as an ESP or marketing automation platform. And our focus as a business is really to help brands transform customer data into growth. So we're looking to see how that we can drive more sales for businesses through retention marketing, such as email, SMS, and those sort of things. So as we say, we look to help mid-market direct-to-consumer brands scale their revenue cost effectively. Rachel, you're on mute, unfortunately.
Thank you. Such a faux pas. Let's talk about the Klevu and Klaviyo connector. So because Klevu is one of the most advanced search AIs on the market for e-commerce, we heard from our customers and from our partners that you really wanted to be able to put those type of search product recommendations within emails automatically. So we built this first version of our Klevu and Klaviyo connector, which you can easily embed Klevu technology into your Klaviyo campaigns and flows. You can connect search terms to individual shoppers and display automatically curated products in your campaigns. And you can actually utilize the search data and the search topics to filter customers by keywords, create custom audiences, etc. So it'll work with email, SMS lists, and flows in Klaviyo. And though I'm a marketer, I'm not the expert. So really happy to have PAASE on the call today to go into more detail on those things.
I'm
So
just glad our name didn't begin with a K as well. Otherwise, I think this would get very confusing.
that is true. Yes, absolutely. So Phil and Dave, why Klaviyo? Why do you work with Klaviyo?
It's an interesting backstory. We got involved with Klaviyo back in August 2019. I was building out the business at the time. We were looking for a platform that allows us to scale businesses cost effectively. What I liked about the platform, my background is working for a tech business doing marketing automation, was the low entry point in terms of cost, the ease of setup and use, and then the scalability that the platform brings. So we've in effect built the business, as it stands today, around the Klaviyo platform. I sit on their Global Partner Advisory Council, so they're very receptive as a business, even as the business as it is, for feedback from customers, partners, to really help develop the platform. I think this is where the Klaviyo integration has come from, around that feedback that brands are giving us, that we're able to then feedback and work together to really evolve the system. So I just like the fact that we get that receptive response from themselves, that they know that there are gaps and that brands are driving that improvement. And as we talk to them with the Klaviyo roadmap, it's all about putting the control back into the hands of the marketeer through their new API structure and their new integration. So they're really looking for us as businesses and brands to really help push them forward. So I don't think you see that with other platforms out there. So that's why we selected Klaviyo back in 2019, and we continue to work with them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's something that Klevu adheres to. I think Klevu and Klaviyo as businesses were very open to kind of feedback from the partner community, and yeah, to build better and deeper integrations with the tech ecosystem. So just a bit of kind of housekeeping, I suppose, like if you have Klevu and if you have Klaviyo, these are the prerequisites for using the connector. A merchant has to have an active Klaviyo account with on-site tracking enabled. You have to be a Klevu customer on our Premium Plus plan or above. And the reason we say that is because we really suggest that you switch on one-to-one personalization in search in general, but also just to make this even more personalized within your emails. And Klevu Smart Search is integrated on your front end using one of the following methods. So Klevu Template JS, or otherwise known as JSV2, our APIs, or headless SDK. So out of the box, what does Klaviyo track? So obviously, someone's active on a site, they viewed a product, checkout started, placed order, order canceled. So this is kind of out of the box Klaviyo. What Klevu Search does and Klevu Search Events is it inserts this Klevu Search here between active on site and viewed product. And Dave or Phil, do you want to talk about as well the improvements that you've made to this out of the box functionality too?
Yeah, if I could unmute myself. Yeah, so there's a couple of additional ones that aren't necessarily out of the box for Klaviyo, but there's things that we would definitely recommend installing as separate API calls. So similar to the way that Klaviyo Search API call is going to work, there's an add to cart one that sits in between view product and checkout started. We actually find that's probably more effective than a checkout abandonment flow. And there's also a viewed category, which will probably sit, actually, ironically, probably before the Klaviyo Search, if someone just looks at a category piece in there. What the Klaviyo Search does is it will also trigger the view product metric. So it's going to trigger those both at the same time. So what we would suggest is just looking at how that customer journey looks like based on the end user rather than that sort of thing. We tend to try and prioritize the further up that chain as possible in terms of the message that we would send out.
When you say further up that chain, what do you mean?
So checkout started, for example, would be a priority for us over add to cart, over view product, over Klaviyo Search as you go further down the funnel in that one. I see Klaviyo Search and the view product metric going to be working in tandem. So it's either one or the other that's going to be working at this point. So it's just a question of which one is going to work best for each individual brand out there. And that's only going to be known by testing. We don't have any stats to know right now that it's going to suddenly do X. We don't know that. So it's just a clear defined test that we would suggest setting up.
Amazing. And you're going to go into some detail about like how to do that in this webinar.
Yeah.
So you talked about customer journey and how kind of you make the customer journey is essential. What makes a great customer journey in email?
The million-dollar question, I think. I think it's very much around a different mindset for a business to move away from a brand that just says, all these messages are important. We must send everything to every individual in the marketing database, to start to think about putting the customer at the heart of that journey. So, are they a prospect? Are they a single-time customer? Are they a loyal customer? Are they in a subscription-based service? So it's all about understanding those touch points and those journeys. If you've got a single product that you sell on an annual basis, do you need to be emailing that consumer 3 times a week who have just made a transaction? That's a very broad brush example, but start to think about, well, actually, if this consumer's just made a transaction, do we need to give them a little bit of breathing space? So actually, we're going to have a series of post-purchase communications going out around order confirmation, order dispatch within 7 days. Let's remove them from the general comms for that 7-day period. But also some of the detail around making sure that if that customer comes back to look at that product, they don't fire a browser abandonment email because they've made the transaction. As a business, we need to understand that and show that. And that's how just starting to think about moving away from the out-of-the-box Klaviyo setup, which very much is defined as you've seen this page or done this action, send this communication, to really focusing on what is right for the customer. So the old mantra, it's been around for 15, 20 years, of right message, right customer, right time, and potentially right channel is so important here. So one of the ways we would do that is to, as an organization, is to sit down around a blank sheet of paper with a customer and start to understand those different journeys a consumer can go through, from a visitor to the site who signs up to email, a visitor that signs up to email as part of the transaction process, and start to think about how we then deliver those comms, because all these systems out there do all this great stuff automatically. But if you don't have those controls and those, the boxes ticked in the right order, you're going to have a worse customer experience, which is going to, you've paid all that money to get someone through to the website. We want to make sure that they then convert or complete the action we want. So it's a really hard thing to define what makes a great customer journey, but I think it's about defining what's right for your customers and your brand and the actions they need. So it's worth thinking about, and thinking about multi-channel as well.
Yeah.
And
that makes a lot. Oh, sorry.
I think just to add to that, I think as marketeers, we will all sit there and look at all of our own emails that come through, because we're marketeers. We're going to look at every single email we received. No customer is ever going to do that, or no prospect is ever going to look at every single email. So you just need to think about actually yourself in that customer's mindset rather than the brand mindset.
Absolutely. Yeah. They do not read our emails in 1 to 5 order ever. Absolutely. And I guess it's cool now with Klaviyo's and Klaviyo's tech marketplace, Klevu and other tech that integrate with Klaviyo give retailers an opportunity to really be nuanced with how they build out flows, and like, if the customer does this and then they do that, then do this. So yeah, it's such a brilliant technology for that.
Yeah, and on that, without taking it too far off topic, is the platform can do it, but you have to define those rules. The system can do whatever you want it to do, but you've got to create that business logic and then program the tool to do it. So it's not going to think like you do as an individual. You have to tell it what you want it to do. So this is where this kind of planning, say, well, if a customer's purchased or browsed product A, we know the most relevant product based on the algorithms are to show them products A, B, C, and D, whatever it may be. Think about that as well, that it's not just going to be a magic box buying a piece of tech. You need to configure it and test and evolve it and learn as you go through.
Cool. Well, David, I'm going to switch over to you now to share your screen. We're going to jump into how you do that.
Perfect. Bear with me for a second. There we go. So many different meeting tools. You lose the share button every now and again. Is that flashing for everybody else, or is it just me that's flashing for?
It's flashing. Oh, it's okay.
Sorry about this. Technical issue. Let's try that again. There we go. So just to give you sort of an overview of how Klevu talks to Klaviyo and understanding that kind of data feed in. This is one of the test stores. And if I, for example, just type in oval and then start typing in mirrors. This is where my internet slowly dies. It starts to show me that over mirror. So the Klaviyo integration, the Klevu bit is pre-populating what it thinks I'm going to say, and this piece. I'm just going to click on one of these mirrors. Okay. So as I said before, by me viewing this product is going to trigger a views browser metric into Klaviyo. So it's going to trigger that browser abandonment flow. It's also going to trigger this Klaviyo search functionality in here, and this is then going to pull in what I've searched for. I admit this says 6 hours ago. There will be another one that came through. I did it earlier on just to test it to make sure it was still working. But it pulls through the product I clicked on, the search results, so anything else within that list of products I was looking at, the search term, the full search term, the subject matter, and then the amount of products that are actually recommended off the back of that. So what we can now do in Klaviyo is actually build a flow off the back of this Klevu search. Quite simply, if we just go into the flows and create a flow, I just want to show you how simple it is to create this flow in there. I can't type and talk at the same time, so I apologize. In that piece, there we go. And this, basically this flow here allows us then to start playing around with the metric. So the metric is the event that's been passed through from Klaviyo, from Klevu into Klaviyo, too many Ks. And here, and then fundamentally we can just drop an email in here, and I've got one that's already made in the template. In the help documents from Klevu, there is all of these the lines of code that you would need to do to put in the products in that piece. But what I want to show you is just what it kind of looks like and how simple it is to sort of just get it going. And now I want to talk about the logic that we would sort of apply on top of that. So hopefully my internet won't die on me. So this email here is just an out of the box one we've created just in terms of using all of the event codes. Now these lines of codes are in a document from Klevu that you can just copy and paste straight into these templates, and you can top and tail it. Now, because of this email being that sort of first thing, it's based on what you've searched. If I've added that item to checkout or basket abandonment, we're never going to be sending this email anyway, because I've gone to the next stage or the next stage of that customer journey. I would say, and Phil, you can jump in here and correct me, that this really should be about just literally about the product you searched and what other options you had, rather than salesy pitch, rather than information, everything else. Literally as a reminder, look, you looked at this, you got distracted. Here's a link back to the site. For us, the email's only job is to get someone back on the website. Not the sale. The website's going to do the sale piece, but how quickly can we get somebody back on the website? Now, to give you an example of what this actually looks like at the end. So this is the item I clicked on. Here are some alternatives dynamically being pulled through. And all I would say is just top and tail this content. So your logo, your header, your footer, and then this content in the middle will get you going in that functionality. Just as every single thing, every event in Klaviyo, you get a preview here and you can kind of search and look through other bits and bobs. So earlier on, I looked at some rugs, for example, specifically blue rugs. So everything in the recommendation was blue rugs. If I searched blue, and it would associate everything else with that blue color in that piece as well. So you can have a look at the way it works. And this is basically just that details being pulled in. This one, I actually searched circle rugs. So I actually pull through just circle rugs and those kind of things in there as well. So it's really simple to set up. But what I think is really important is I've just set an email up there. For the sake of setting an email up, we could set that live right now. But actually, what we really think about is coming back to that customer journey piece of going, what conditions do we need on this flow? So everybody who triggers this flow at the moment is going to get this email straight away. This is where I start thinking about, okay, how long do we want to delay it for? My suggestion would be start at a 2-hour mark and then test. Drop it down to 1 hour, test those kind of things in that piece. But also what we want to do here is flow filters. We want to make sure that if someone has placed an order, so we don't want them to get this one. If someone has started checkout, we don't want them to get this email. We want them to get a basket abandonment. If someone's added to cart, we don't want them to get this one. We want to get added to cart. And that principle here is really what that logic in this bit is really important to when this email fires and that the volume of email that's going to go out on those parts. The other bit is that stage back that I would go as well.
Oh, David, we just have a question about, can you zoom in a little on the screen? Thanks.
There we go. So because that viewed product metric and that Klaviyo search metric will come through at the same time. So if you look at this one, viewed product, Klaviyo search, we are effectively triggering two separate flows here. So it's really important that we define which one we actually want to go and how we want to control that. So this browser abandonment flow based off that view product metric. And this is where I think this will depend on what brand you are, but this is where I think you really start to sort of play around and test how you do it. So for example, here, I would put a conditional split. What somebody has done, overview search, 0 times. And we're just going to put in the last day just to make my life a little bit easier. Oh, hang on a sec. If that lets me. So this will be the Klaviyo search trigger. And had they triggered the Klaviyo search trigger, I would send them out of this flow and into the Klaviyo search flow. If they've just gone on the website and viewed a product, we still want them to trigger this flow, but they've just triggered it in a different way. So we want to make sure we balance the two principles in there. But what you could do on this path is maybe send the first email from the Klaviyo search, maybe send the second email from the view product flow. So you can start to really play around with what you're going to do with those individual flows. For me, because there's no data on this, because it's brand new, is what's going to work best for you is going to involve you testing how that works for you. And I think those are the simple ways of doing it. Key for me is no one wants to receive a search abandonment, a browser abandonment, and a basket abandonment email at the same time, because it doesn't make sense. So it's that kind of piece in terms of, we always talk about customer journey. We probably used it far too much already on this call, but that is the reason why, is we really want to focus on the right message at the right time to the right person.
David, I have a question.
Yeah.
So say for example, somebody adds an item to, they add an item to their basket, which then would trigger the abandoned basket flow. But then after that, they do a Klevu search for something else. Do you think that might make the search actually more important?
So I think there's a specific use case there in terms of that kind of journey. I still think the add to cart flow is more powerful and was more likely to convert that person than send them on another path. Now, what we could look at is, if that add to cart flow doesn't work and it gets to day 5 or day 6, how can we then trigger that Klaviyo search thing to re-trigger that mindset? And I think there's an engagement piece in terms of this as well. If they're not engaging with the add to cart email, could we try the Klaviyo search email instead? How do we get them to engage? And that's the key thing. Is it's all well and good saying let's add another email to the mix here. If someone's not actually receiving the email in their inbox, the issue isn't the email, the issue is the deliverability. If they're not opening the email, the issue may not be the fact that it's the right email, it may be the subject line's incorrect. If they're not clicking on the email, it may be the design rather than the actual information in there as well. So it's a really, really difficult to map that out and plan that whole user journey piece, unless you're kind of sitting there and going, okay, user A gets this, user B gets this, user C gets this.
Yeah, I'd also add to that, the other thing to bear in mind is volumes when you're testing. So you need a significant amount of volume really to be able to prove whether A versus B in your test results, because if you've got a small volume, 1 or 2 orders or clicks can skew those results, and it doesn't give you a statistically significant result. So I think, to Dave's point, lots of testing, almost get going, build a baseline of results with best practice around not over mailing the user, and then say, well, actually, what happens then if we start to tweak these actions based on so for example, within the journey, you might trigger multiple flows and just be excluded on an individual campaign, and then make that decision on email 3 in the flow, in various parts. So I think it's about building a baseline and then looking at what's occurring with each customer and what's driving the most significant results.
Another thing to mention, and maybe you guys want to talk through this as well, is like in my very brief overview of Klaviyo, I've noticed like universal content blocks Is there a use case for pulling in Klevu search product data into universal content blocks with kind of conditional, with conditions?
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were going to talk for.
You go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way that the data comes in. So if I just revert back to this screen here, this data here, the way that Klaviyo works means I can only use this individual data off this trigger point. So universal blocks are great because you can start to update individual blocks and it updates across multiple emails. At the moment, with the way that this integration is set up, and I think this is probably a stage 2 for Klaviyo, is if we could get these search results into sort of custom properties, we could start to use those bits in different ways and different multiple factors across multiple emails. And come back to that sort of, you've added it to cart, you could start potentially adding those search items for that follow-up search into those future add to cart emails, and you start to use those bits in multiple ways going forward as well.
That's great. And yeah, so sorry, just to note that we did get that from you, David, and our product team has that on the roadmap for that change.
I was going to suggest a bit of a workaround in that actually we could use, the workflow that is triggered by the Klevu connector can send emails, which is what Dave's discussed. But what you can also do is use it to update custom properties. So it might be a little bit broader, and it might be the fact that we've got a preference on color, for example. So suddenly that can then be used against a profile to trigger various custom catalog merges based on, I don't know, blue rugs rather than red rugs. And you can then use the custom properties to show and hide. So it may not be as efficient as where we're aiming to get the integration to, but there is a workaround maybe to start some broad brush testing as it stands now.
And just to add that, I think they need to be fairly broad in terms of very top search level pieces there. Otherwise, you're going to go way too granular, and you're not going to get the volumes that Phil was talking about going through those individual emails, because they'll be too granular at that point. So start slightly broader and then bring yourself down into that granular piece.
Perfect. I know I interrupted you with questions. Please feel free to carry on with your.
So the next thing in terms of the Klaviyo is how do we use this search data in different ways? So Phil was talking about potentially building data feeds out and using those kind of things, but also building segments. So we know that I've been looking at oval mirrors. Potentially there's campaigns that we could be specifically to me around the mirrors, around lighting, around furniture, or what those kind of pieces are looking at. Just thinking nutrition, for example, if I've been looking at searching for energy and sleep, potentially there's a journey about energy that you could send me on, and different pieces in there. Now, lists and segments are really easy to set up in Klaviyo. I've got a few examples in here. We always have 2 parameters on our segments. Is in that master list of data and is not suppressed for email. It just helps us know exactly who we're going to be sending it to, because Klaviyo won't send it to anybody who is suppressed anyway in there. This one here, for example, is a Klaviyo search in the last 2 days. Klaviyo searched at least twice in the overall time where it contains rug in that piece. One thing I was going to say about this is not going to pull any historical data in here. This is all going to be brand new data from Klaviyo into Klaviyo. So there almost may be a point here of, rather than thinking about segmentation for campaigns to start with, think about segmentations for what kind of pots you may want to single out and go for in a couple of months' time, and start sort of almost just monitoring those numbers as those searches appear and fill those pots. Just because that historical data is not coming in, you're going to be brand new searches from the day you install it. To Rachel's point earlier on when we were talking, actually, do you know what? It may be just wise just to install it and see what that data feed is in before you start to think about, okay, can we send an email? What's the customer journey look like? At least you're starting to pull the data into the system. And I think that's it, Rachel, for me.
Cool. Sorry, I was just a bit busy in the questions here. I just wanted to pull up a couple. So one that came through is, if the customer were to search for entirely 2 different terms, would Klevu pick up the first one searched, more valuable, etc.? How would that work? So from a Klevu search point of view, Klevu would pull through both events in Klaviyo and record them in Klaviyo. And is that right? It would then be up to the team to make rules around those triggers.
Yeah, so Klaviyo should pull in, it should send the email based on the last thing searched. So similar to the viewed product, it'll only send the browser email on the last viewed product. So it will work the same way that piece of things, and it'll pick the last thing to trigger the box in there. Cool. But what you can do actually, while I've got it on, I did have it on screen, is there is one functionality with Klaviyo, just out of the box with Klaviyo, is you can pull in these recently viewed items at any point anyway into those email feeds. So you could look at the last searched item, but you could still then pull in the Klaviyo recently viewed items as well into the email. So you kind of got best of both worlds in that.
Mm-hmm. Dave, would you go back to the slides, I think, and just talk through some of the other, some of the use cases, and then analytics.
Oh, I don't want to do that. How do I share my slideshow? There you go.
Yeah.
Wrong button.
So yeah, the next slide is just about kind of exactly what pulls through. I'm actually happy to talk through this, maybe just briefly, David, if you don't mind. So Klevu pulls through the search term, which is whatever somebody puts into the search bar. But the cool thing about this is that Klevu uses NLP to actually tell you what the full search term is. So if you wanted to pull that through into an email text, you could actually utilize the full search term and you would know that it was not sending some gibberish to your customers. But just going down to kind of the bottom, the subject, this is really cool. And this is where we get to the broad stuff. So Klevu can actually derive the subject from the search term, whether that's partial or full. So for example, if you search for stool, Klevu would probably assign that subject as chair, or, so that it would be the broader search term. So you could actually utilize that subject to pull in broader segments of customers. So you weren't working with ones or twos.
Rachel, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
If it pulls in that, is that customizable by the brand in terms of the stool will then, the subject will be the chair? Or is that just sort of by using?
No, I wouldn't say that's customizable by the brand, but because it's utilizing the AI within the context of that store, okay, it is likely to be relevant to that brand.
Okay, cool.
And then, yeah, the total number of product results and clicked and search results. So the difference here between what Klevu will suggest is that it's actually Klevu AI suggestions based on either one-to-one personalization on the website itself for that particular shopper, or if that isn't turned on, then it would be suggestions from that individual store. So they're likely to be a little bit, excuse me, more relevant than maybe what Klaviyo would suggest on its own, because that takes quite a bit of manual work, other than the recently viewed or recently clicked stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit on that, David?
Yeah, if I unmute myself. Yeah, so I think it's exactly that. It's more refined, so it's more personalized to that end user. Whereas Klaviyo, you can do that broader piece, but actually this is more laser focused in terms of delivering me the right content as the end user. So,
oh, we've got another question. 1 second. What happens for searches that return 0 results? What is the event in Klaviyo? So this is where you can set your rules. So you wouldn't trigger that, right? You could say if 0 results, or even if you had a template that was like only 3 products wide and you wanted to make sure it was full, you could say if it returns less than 3 results, not to trigger this as well.
So yeah. Also, sorry, if it returns 0 results, the trigger only works once you physically clicked on a product.
That's true.
So actually, once you've clicked on a product, there will be recommendations based on the product you've clicked on. So even if it does return 0 search results, it doesn't actually trigger into Klaviyo until you physically clicked on a product.
Yeah, one of the things we ought to, as this is a new process, just test within the standard browser abandonment. There's a function as well available to say don't trigger this email if that product's out of stock. So again, this could be something we could just tweak. But I think the advantage of using this process versus the out of stock item is you've got the other recommended products that relate to it. So there's another advantage here to start thinking about.
Absolutely. that's it for me on that slide. David, do you want to go to the next?
I was just going to say that there's one more thing on that slide, which is there's additional attributes that you could be sending through across if you needed to, so that if you wanted more data in there, that can be built into that process across as well.
Awesome.
So I think we've briefly touched on creating segments based on search terms and subjects, etc., etc. And I think for me, it's really based on tracking to start with, get some numbers in there, and then work out whether you want to be a little bit more laser focused in some of those campaigns, or maybe you want to use it to certain tagging that you can do ongoing on those ones. This slide deck will be shared at the end, but you've also got obviously ideas on how to build those segments in there as well.
Yeah, we'll send out these slides afterwards. So this is just kind of a reminder of what you've been shown.
Again, this is that sort of almost best practice piece in here as well. Checkout started 0 times since starting the flow, placed order 0 times, has not been in this flow in the last day, 2 days, those kind of things in that piece as well. This doesn't necessarily need to be in here. This is one where I think it will be brand on brand, whether they want to add that one in. Total number of product results is greater than 4. If you've triggered it, then actually potentially there's a chance for an email to go out because you've triggered that flow. But again, it's worth testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
Sorry, Dave. I think on that, one of the most important ones, again, coming back, looping everything back to the customer journey, is that limitation on the frequency they can receive that came throughout a defined time period. So if someone's on the site regularly, you don't want that to happen. A prime example of this is, and actually you could do this at a list level, is if you've got a series of trade customers visiting your D2C website and ordering through that with their own discount code, you potentially don't want the trade customers just receiving that constantly. So you could actually exclude them from the flow as a list as well. So there are other ways around this just to kind of start thinking about that customer experience. If every time I look at a product, I'm receiving an email fairly quickly, it's not a particularly good customer experience. So start to think about putting the customer at the heart of everything you do.
And then sort of measuring click rate, conversion rates, and revenue driven by the Klaviyo recommendations. And I think for us, because we are experts in Klaviyo, but we are a very commercially focused agency in what will drive ROI and revenue. There are other sort of lower hanging fruits in the world of email that you can grab quicker revenue wins. But actually, we don't know how much revenue this flow is going to drive because we've not seen it in action in the live. I would expect a better click rate through on this email than the browser abandonment email, and I would expect a slightly better conversion rate off the back of this Klevu search than the browser abandonment email, just because it's more laser focused to me in that piece. But again, it needs to be tested, and those kind of features in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a marketer, coming from a marketer's point of view, it's an easy way to like identify your bottom of the funnel searchers. So if you have certain search terms that often convert, you could also strategize like that, where you put an alert on certain terms that then drive more frequent comms or that pull back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this one's always a good one that we kind of always ask, what does good look like? Well, for every brand, it's going to be different. Now, email could be just pure play revenue driven, could be brand driver, it could be a combination of both. It's about what you use the channel for as a brand to know what good looks like. For us, the main point of the email is to drive someone back to the website. So for us, it's always going to be engagement. But again, if you're paying agencies like us, you're going to want a return on investment. So there has to be a scope that it generates more revenue. I think from a Klaviyo point of view, if you've got Klaviyo on the website and you can integrate it into Klaviyo, it's a no-brainer to me because there's more data coming across. There's more advantages to use it. You've got longer scope to use it. And I think that's with every single piece of tech that you might have on your site. If you can get it integrated into Klaviyo and get it functioning in a way that works, it's using stuff you're already paying for in multiple ways. So you get more.
Yeah, fantastic point. And I think just to tell the audience something you told me before, like the Klevu search events only start coming through once you make the connection. So I think even if you're not planning on using this, it's probably a good idea to hook it up so you've got that historical data starting to build over peak.
Yeah, absolutely. I think peak is ideal to start building that data pots as well in there. And also it will give you some lessons for next year in terms of what were the key search items for this Black Friday next year as well. And will help some planning and focus next year as well.
Yeah.
Bill, have you got anything else you want to add to
that? There was a question that came through about Rex. Will Klevu recommendations be integrated as a template we can edit to our liking? At the moment, that's not available, but it is on our roadmap. So I can talk to that in a few minutes. Would you go to the next slide, David?
Yeah.
That question I have just answered, and I think, as you said, it's not visually, the structure is very similar to the viewed product, so that generally people have got that email. So actually, you could replicate that flow, and then you will need to go through, change the trigger point to the Klaviyo metric, but then just start to tweak the content. So it's a fairly straightforward process.
Okay. Well, on this slide, there is a QR code that goes directly to the Getting Started guide using Klaviyo events and Klaviyo flows. But these are the links as well that are available on the Klaviyo support site for getting started. You can go to the next slide, Dave. Yeah, these are just some FAQs, what will be used in flows. I already answered this. Yeah, just conscious of time. Let's just go to the next one. So can I add more product attributes to send to Klaviyo? Yes. David and Phil's team can do that. Requires a little bit of code. Absolutely. Okay, so this is just about using it from APIs. You can integrate Klaviyo, yes. Go to the next one. Is Klaviyo GDPR compliant? Absolutely. At the moment, we're just sending things over to Klaviyo. So, Klaviyo is not storing any data from Klaviyo at the moment. And then what's next? So we're really excited about this kind of first, we call it MVP, of this integration with Klevu search events. We are considering how we can improve this as part of our roadmap. So we're looking at external data feeds to pass Klevu AI recommendations into Klaviyo. So to be able to provide blocks of trending or popular products. We're looking at category view events and abandoned category flows. And we're also looking at personalized recommendations at a shopper level. So as you use it, please do feed into the product board, which you can access through the Klevu Merchant Center, and vote on things, add your comments. We want to know how you're using this and what you need to use it better. Next slide. Yeah, so any other questions from the audience? Feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A.
Whilst they're doing that, can I do a little bit of a plug, Rachel, to our audit and those kind of things?
Absolutely.
So I think off the back of this, we kind of agreed that one of you lucky lot will sort of win a full discovery audit off the back of that. But we also do Klaviyo audits across the board. So if you wanted help or advice in terms of how to improve your current Klaviyo setup, whether there's potentially low hanging fruit you can grab right now, whether there's potential issues in terms of what we think that customer journey looks like, we're more than happy to do those audits. There's a link in this one just to put that session in, and they're quite detailed as well, so you get quite a lot of information off the back of it.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And the lucky winner of this will get an audit where they specifically set up Klevu and Klaviyo together and figure out what works for your brand. All those different triggers we discussed. Okay, well, we are right on time. Thank you everyone for joining this. Yeah, the recording will be sent. I'll also contact all of you to send the slides as well and some links for getting started. And yeah, please do get in touch with me if you use the Klaviyo Klevu Connector. I'm really interested in hearing how you're using it, how you're getting on with it, and feeding that back into the product team. Thanks, David, and thanks, Phil, for joining.
All right,
Thank you very much.